Oh man, and here we are once again. Welcome to another episode of The More You Know. Last week I could not get anything recorded. My guest came on and he was traveling, so he wasn't with his gear, so his audio wasn't the greatest, and it- from a quality perspective, I couldn't let that fly because it just wouldn't come out for y'all that are listening on your headphones right now. But we we're here now and we're gonna post this one up. And this one has been in the making for over a month now. I actually scrolled up on our conversation that we had on Reddit, and the first time that you messaged me was back in May 17th. So it's been over a month since we've been planning this. A lot of technical difficulties or just something came up in each other's schedule that came up. But today I'm joined with cybersecurity expert Josh. Josh found my podcast and he listened to the one that I had with the brothers talking about cybersecurity, and that really fascinated him. And he told me more about his background, and he sounded like a really nice candidate to have on the show and to kind of pick his brains more on cybersecurity. So, Josh, can you give us a brief intro of yourself?
Oh, thank you ever so much. Yeah, it's great to be here. Yeah, my name is Josh, as you've already stated. I work at the moment for a non-tracking search engine, which is based in the UK, and it's called Mojeek. I do love the word expert when it's used to describe me. It's always very, very flattering. I guess on top of cybersecurity, I would say that I'm also well versed. Let's be a little bit more small p political with it in subjects such as privacy, economics, and monopolies, big technology stuff, all of that. And I'm a perpetual tinkerer. I'm a person who loves to take things apart and put them back together again. Um, and also a bedroom musician, which is why hopefully the audio for this will be better than your traveling guest from last week, who managed to not produce brilliantly high fidelity audio production.
So it's 100% better. Also, one thing I because you said this in your messages, but but just like you saying it, kind of made me question. You said that you work for a non-tracking search engine.
Yes, yeah, indeed. Yeah, gone.
So my main question is, what really makes it so anonymous? Because the first thing that comes into mind when I think of non-tracking search engine is the Tor browser or Onion. So the way that you get onto the dark web. Is yours similar like that, or could you kind of like elaborate more on that part?
Diving straight in with some extremely interesting stuff here. So I guess we'll pick it apart here. You mentioned Tor, and I think that that is something which is definitely good to kind of explain before kind of giving the differences between the things that we're talking about here. Tor, the Onion router, is basically a method for being anonymous online, which sort of involves um, accessing different content on the web by going through a mesh of different computers. So you have a bunch of different nodes on a network which are running in order to kind of obscure what people are doing. So at the moment, I am connecting to the lovely podcast app that you're using, and I'm doing this in a direct fashion. I could use something called a VPN in order to sort of connect to somewhere else before I connect to you, but I wouldn't want to chance it and ruin our opportunity to have a brilliant conversation between the two of us. So I'm just going direct. When it comes to the Onion router, which is a very interesting project, which is kind of maintained as a network by essentially like a large quantity of different volunteers, and there's a not for profit organization backing it. It's basically a mesh of different connections that kind of are sewn together in order to create that anonymity. And as you quite rightly pointed out there, it's something which has been used by people in order to visit websites that some people may think are doing good things, some people may think are doing bad things. But on top of that, the Onion router also gets used by a lot of kind of journalists and people who are in countries where maybe things that they believe or things that are essential parts of their being are things that they cannot really do legally. So it does also provide quite an interesting, quite a vital service for people who are persecuted in different countries. Um, Rolling back to the no tracking search engine thing. So this is a bit different, the thing that we do. Basically, when somebody hears the word search engine, they will normally probably think of the big G, Google, right? The search engine which you use the word Google in place of the words to search for something. Google is a tracking search engine. When people use Google to search the web, they are fundamentally giving up parts of themselves in order to make it so that the search results are based upon these algorithms that kind of ping off of these different aspects of yourself in order to reorder results. And obviously that kind of works into Google's model, which is based upon knowing as much about you as possible so that it can push you to more and more relevant. And I'm doing the scare quotes, but obviously podcasting is
Mm-hmm.
a medium. You cannot see it, but yeah. More and more relevant advertisements. And that is the model upon which the entirety of the alphabet empire is basically built. What we do at Mojeek is we don't like that. We don't really think that providing search as a service requires us to know really much about you at all. And there can be some quite perverse outcomes when it comes to feeding so much of people individually into the search engine. There are bad routes that can happen through the internet when it comes to a search engine that is constantly pushing back to you the things that you want to see. It doesn't really mean that you're going to be able to dig deeper into another side of an issue if all you're really getting is results that are things that kind of already confirm your biases and are things that you'd want to see. I guess that there's a little bit of a kind of a coding layer here, which is an interesting part for anybody who's listening who is a little bit more technologically savvy. But I'll try and like put some training wheels on it. Fundamentally, the main way through which all of the tracking is done, and the main way through which we do not do any tracking, is by not having JavaScript, which is code that runs in your browser, in the web browser that you're using, in order to kind of automate scripts and stuff like that when you're using something on the web. And Mojeek has no JavaScript. It's well, yeah, it has never really used JavaScript at all. It's something that we've not really been into because of the deleterious things that can happen when it comes to those little pieces of code that are running on different pages and extracting parts of you and feeding them into this big data machine.
That was a whole handful, but I think I think I get it. I think I get it now. Let's just dive into the main question that I was kind of curious on. I'm sure that you probably read about like how the U.S. probably had, well, not probably, did have a big cybersecurity hack in one of their pipelines in the southwestern area. Are you are you familiar with that
Yes, I
area?
am. I'm not overly familiar with the area, but I'm definitely familiar with the story.
So, from like a cybersecurity perspective on that, what are your thoughts on like what happened and how could this have been prevented?
I think this is one of those issues that we are going to see more and more as we kind of hurtle into a more and more connected future, because the trend, and I mean, you can probably see it in your own home, is computers are being put in more and more things. You've got smart lights. I've actually got right near me right now some Amazon Dash buttons that I bought off of eBay, which is something, an IoT device that Amazon kind of created and then bricked for pressing a button in your home so that you could order toilet roll quicker than going onto the computer and purchasing it directly.
All right, I saw one of those ads like a while back, and like I kind of never really saw those pop up again. Are they like still popular still,
No,
or?
not at all. No, no, no. So this is one of those things which we could definitely go on to talk about if you want. Something that I have as a kind of persistent bugbear, I guess, of mine is the degree to which many different pieces of technology get created almost intentionally to be disposable. Um, so these Amazon Dash buttons, they are not something that you can really use anymore. And if you connected an Amazon Dash button to your wireless network at home, there is an update that Amazon created that bricks them. And I don't know if that the word brick in this context is something that a lot of people would understand, but in kind of software hardware circles, if something is bricked, it means that it doesn't work anymore. It's dead. It's intentionally been killed off.
Yeah, a lot of people may have heard the term bricked as like a bricked iPhone.
Yeah,
So when you brick your iPhone, basically you can't use it anymore unless you maybe take it to Apple and they do their fancy little stuff to it.
exactly that. And so the dash buttons were at a time a thing that you could purchase, and you would have them in your house, and you'd like press them, and the toilet roll comes. Not instantly, obviously, it's not magic, but it connects to the web, and it makes a call to Amazon to say, "I want this product." Um, but this is something that happens quite a lot. Is a company will come up with a product, and it will be usable for a period of time, and then after you've gone past a certain window and it's not really profitable for them to maintain the software anymore, they will just push an update that kills it. And the reason why I have these dash buttons, by the way, is because these have never been activated. So if I set them up on my home network and I block the connection out to Amazon servers, I can use them in my house to like do things. Like, you have smart lights, for example. With a little bit of coding, and I'm not the best in the world at it, but reading some guides and doing the right stuff, I can make it so that one of these funny little buttons that have like a Red Bull logo on them can switch a light on and off. It's quite a fun thing, and I think it's one of those one of these things which I find quite problematic when it comes to technology is that there's a lot of things that you have in your house that you would call yours, like my computer, my phone, my whatever, but they're not really at the end of the day yours, because there is an external company that is kind of maintaining that software. And in the case of this thing, the Amazon Dash buttons, the company can get rid of it at any point. And it's the same thing as, actually, hilariously enough, today, my partner's sister had a Now TV box. I don't know if do you have that in the States? Is that it's a Sky service, like a Roku type thing?
Like a streaming device?
Yeah, it's a streaming device. It's like it might be that Sky maintain like a similar thing, but they just call it something different because
Oh yeah, yeah. We don't have that. We mostly just stick with the big two ones here are the Amazon Fire Stick or the Roku stick.
exactly. Okay, so Roku is a kind of like a firmware that would run on this box. Like that's what it was running before. And I stupidly, like so I use a bunch of different small computers in different rooms for streaming television, and I've got a central kind of network connected device that has a bunch of hard drives with completely legally downloaded TV programs on them. And I said completely legally downloaded, so UK police do not come after me. And these devices link up to the network attached storage, and they allow me to browse my media from the different televisions in my house. Now, I thought this Now TV box, this can be for the living room. I can just connect it up to the television. I'll flash something new to it or something like that, or I'll do some like nifty things, and it can be my little streaming device that's in the living room. So I fired it up, and it hasn't touched the internet for a while. Fired it up, was able to browse about and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, the device went dead. I switched it back on, and the screen which came up was, sorry, this device is not supported anymore. And they bricked it. Like once it had hit the web, it had an update pushed to it that made it so that it didn't work anymore. So now what I have is essentially a small computer inside a piece of plastic that has no use outside of being thrown in a landfill. It's
Wow,
ridiculous. And
that's insane.
exactly, and it's still, to a person like myself, and I think to your average person who can follow a flipping guide, it is still a useful piece of technology. It's something which you could. I mean, it's a cliched kind of idea of what you do with old things, and I think it definitely reeks of some kind of uh, colonial kind of vibes. But this is also something that could be given to a developing nation that did not necessarily have all of the infrastructure that was necessary to be producing or importing different things. Fundamentally, at the end of the day, this small computer, which has been killed off by a very large company, is still of use to somebody, but it's not yours. Um, this was a tangent of which, if you want, we can step backwards towards the pipeline stuff. But I'm more than happy to like follow on down this rabbit hole if you're willing for the ride.
Let's come back to maybe after the show because I'm kind of more interested because
Of
I'm
course,
pretty
my friend.
interested in that. But could you talk about like what really like what really went wrong in the pipeline incident where they were able to get in the system and shut off the whole pipeline for like 4 days, causing massive panic here in the US. People going to gas stations and filling up anything that they could fill up with gasoline.
Oh, of course, of course. So, what I'm not going to be able to give you is something which is a very, very honed-in technical explanation.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But this is
I don't think that would be the best because I think people would just be like, I don't know what half of that means. Maybe a like explain like I'm five type of
Yeah, of course, of
explanation.
course. So we roll back to what I was talking about when it comes to putting computers into everything, and that means that you end up with situations where something which before would have been just a mechanical process becomes a mechanical process with a technological layer. And I mean, well, it's an incorrect way of saying it because mechanical processes are like that is leveraging a technology. But when I'm talking about technology here, what I mean is web enabled, like internet networked things. When you add that layer to something which was previously a mechanical process, what you create is a vulnerability. So you might have before had in that pipeline, and this is going to be something that probably is completely off base when it comes to the specifics, but you might have had a door that opens or shuts on the pipeline. And before that door would have been something which was mechanical. Maybe you had someone who was actually employed. You had people who were on a rolling 24-hour basis, switching in and switching out and doing that operation manually, pulling up the door, pushing down the door. Very, very simple way of describing how this can kind of change. You add in a computer that means that you automate out that person. So big thumbs up for the pipeline company because they don't have to pay that wage anymore. And I mean, that's a
Mhm.
whole nother thing that you could talk about when it comes to people being automated out of the workplace. But they've got a computer involved now, and it saves some money. But at the same time, what you've done is you've created a vulnerability because up until the point where Elon Musk manages to go fully down his nonsense idea, which I do not think will ever come to fruition, of inserting chips into people, you can't really hack a person, can you? But you can hack a computer. And that is your issue. And when it comes to the way in which software is developed, we don't necessarily prioritize the security when it comes to these like broader technologies. There's a very, very brilliant American cryptographer and technology writer called Bruce Schneier who wrote a book called Click Here to Kill Everybody. That was a weird and unexpected tongue twister there. And that book talks about basically this issue of putting computers into everything and combining that with a development model for software that does not necessarily prioritize security above everything else. And we go back to an example that when I was kind of talking about this idea with you before, when it comes to manufacturing something like a car or a plane, the danger to any individual is quite clear and obvious. If the plane goes down, the people by and large will die. There have been some examples of times when that didn't happen, but by and large, not to get too morbid, but that's what happens. And so a lot of very, very deep care is taken in the process of manufacturing that plane. There is a lot of testing that happens ahead of anybody getting into it as like a proper passenger flight, because the company understands and the engineers understand and everybody kind of understands the real risk. But the way that this has happened when it comes to technology, and once again, we're talking about technologies as in web enabled internet technologies, that danger isn't so obvious. I mean, there are a couple of things that you could probably pull out of your brain right now. Like if there were a lot of IoT, Internet of Things, like network computer stuff going into medical devices. Okay, that is something where I will give you. It is quite obvious that there is a clear danger. But when it comes to developing the rolling back to what I said before, the software that opens up, makes the door go up and makes the door go down, it's not so obvious that there's going to be a massive problem with that. It's something that you can kind of hand wave and go, well, I mean, it breaks, we'll just get someone out there. And you end up in a situation where you have all of these different vulnerabilities, which are built off the back of the fact that there are tiny little computers in every single thing. And I guess the issue is that we're not going to put things back in the box. Like, it is open now. The more things you can put computers in, the better when it comes to the future of technology. I mean, I've read recently about clothing brands putting chips in t-shirts. It's something which is, at least in my eyes, wholly unnecessary, and I can't really see what the benefit is from it. But you create another vulnerability.
Well, when you're talking about chips and t-shirts, are you talking about like actual physical microchips that are going in like the clothing itself, or are we talking about RFID technology where you can put like an RFID tag on all of the clothes just for, so from like a supply chain perspective, it's easier to keep track of inventory just by having those RFID tags on them, and it can, and well, in this case, bring more accurate inventory analysis on it.
So the answer is both of these things, and the RFID one I can see from the stock management perspective. Being a person who's worked in a bunch of retail shops when I was a lot younger, I can kind of see the benefit of that. But we're also seeing experimentation when it comes to the way in which things like clothing can kind of leverage this smart light type technology, and looking at ways in which we can kind of push the envelope on how tech can kind of be pushed into these different areas where it didn't exist before, in order to create something cool. And quite fundamentally, a lot of the problems that you have when it comes to that kind of stuff is that it's something that people will see as cool and not necessarily kind of view in a wider system of making everything a little bit more insecure.
Gotcha. Quite frankly, that's very interesting that they're trying to incorporate technology in that type of way into clothing itself. If you do have an article that you could send me probably after this podcast, I would love to read it myself because
Of course.
I've honestly never really heard of that, and this is like news to me. And I think it would be a good article to link for the listeners who are curious more about this topic, because if you're like me, this is a completely new area that I have never really heard of before.
Well, I guess one of the other things that you could take as something that people will have heard about, and it's something which kind of had a bit of an abrupt stop because of some of the privacy concerns. But Google Glass, like the idea of implanting even higher level technology into something as simple as glasses, and the way in which kind of augmented reality could be something that your average person could use to constantly have a stream of directions and weather and all of that stuff. I mean, that is something which I think very much was just borrowed from sci-fi kind of ideas and brought into the real world. But that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I have a couple of comments to say about that. But like even like before, you did mention how some companies do get rid of like cybersecurity IT teams to replace them with a computer that can, yes, save money on like the wages side, but also creates another vulnerable.
Now you're getting the tongue
it
twisters.
it just it just exposes them more to like another potential attack. Why do you think companies do this just to save a buck, when in the long run, if they're going to release, say, like all of these Amazon Alexas and like the Google points and like the Google assistants, if they're going to put more stuff that rely on internet, that rely on the internet, and that could get hacked, because in the US we did see cars get hacked at one point. I think it was one of the cars from Jeep. Hackers were able to get in and could actually lock the person's car while they're driving and kind of render them useless. Why would some people want to get rid of like a cybersecurity IT team which could fight back, or even at the point of breach, lock everything down?
So essentially, the question is why would you replace a person with a machine, right? Like that's the basic kind of idea.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because with everything coming out, everything has Wi-Fi or connectivity to it.
yeah. I mean, it's a case of computers, machines being simple objects that have quite an obvious point at which they're going to eventually degrade. Like they've got a life cycle to them. They are capital in the grand scheme of like how we talk about economics. You've got capital, land, labor, and they are capital. People are a lot more difficult than machines. They do things like demand higher wages. They do things like unionize. I mean, in the case of Amazon and in your country, not so much at the moment, but one can hope. Um, they are a lot more of a kind of unknown factor when it comes to the process of making things. And there's a large history of things like labor organizing, which has fundamentally gone against the wishes of bigger corporations. And as these corporations get bigger and bigger, the kind of last Hail Mary that you have is the idea of government regulation and intervention from organized labor. And I think that this is just another kind of arm of how you fight against that. If you are a Bezos, if you are a whoever, pluck one of the coterie of different billionaires out of the sky like that. Any of these people would probably prefer to be living in a world where they are dealing with vast quantities of machines and small quantities of people than the inverse. Yeah.
Sounds like they're just trying to build a cult.
I mean, it is kind of, isn't
It just
it?
sounds like they're trying to build a huge cult uh right now.
And it's not even like I'm trying to I'm not I mean, people use the word Luddite incorrectly all the time and in a very ahistorical fashion.
What
um
was the term?
Luddite. No.
I don't think I've heard of it, but I haven't really heard it used much.
Okay. Well, it's a term that I think very much needs reclaiming. But basically, the Luddites were a group of weavers who smashed the machinery that they saw as machines which were going to replace them, and they were completely correct. Like these new high tech, and when we're talking about high tech here, this was a long time ago, so it's not high tech by today's standards. But these new machines would make it so that you did not need a large quantity of the Luddites in order to produce these clothes. And they looked at them and they were like, much like I don't know, the worries about the automated checkouts, for example, in your supermarket. That could be considered a situation in which the technology which is being introduced is fundamentally opposed to the amount of labor hours that could be needed in a specific situation. And people use the word luddite normally to describe somebody who is anti-technology, or it's a very it, they've been abused when it comes to the way in which we see them through the lens of history, because fundamentally they were correct when they smashed the machines because they believed the machines were going to take their jobs. They were on point. It was right.
It's just a
Yeah.
matter of when,
Of when.
really.
Oh well. Oh, when exactly? Oh, are we basically fatalistic about this? Eventually, the machines will take over.
Yeah, it's a very scary thought.
Yeah.
Unless like we're talking like Iron Man type of tech. Mm-mm.
People potentiating tech. But this is the thing. I think the reason why I brought up the luddite thing was because fundamentally I think there is a world in which people and technology can have a very, very beautiful symbiotic relationship. It's just the way in which we currently set up our economic systems, and the way in which this technology is being introduced is not necessarily moving towards that aim. And the majority of technology fundamentally has the potential to be extremely liberatory when it comes to people. It has a brilliant ability in to bring people together, to help potentiate people's ability to communicate, and to fundamentally, like, if there are machines taking work out of society, which is work that is kind of monotonous or undesirable. And I'm not saying that the checking out in a shop, which is something that I did a lot of throughout the course of my youth, is something which is monotonous and undesirable. But if there are ways of taking that out of society and people want that, then fundamentally, thumbs up, great time. But the problem is, what do you do in order to make it so that the people who are taken out of that labor system have something to do with their lives, have an ability to make the money that they need to make in order to live?
Kind of think about that right now is a very very difficult equation to balance right there.
Hmm.
I would be interested to see how that turns out in like the future, but I do agree. I do think that we are a little bit far away from that because right now there's it's a very split uh work environment. I feel like
Indeed, yeah, yeah. And you get things like, I mean, you guys have. It's not quite made it over here yet, but stuff like DoorDash, is that?
yes, we have
Yes.
DoorDash, we have Uber Eats now, and I think there's one more spin off of it.
So I think fundamentally the really big one in the UK, we have Uber Eats is a thing, but mainly Deliveroo has been the kind of the gigantic delivery service when it comes to the United Kingdom, at least. And that's another interesting thing, because throughout all of this time that I've talked about kind of the automation of different processes, I hadn't talked about the automation of what is essentially like managerial processes. And that's what things like DoorDash and like Deliveroo do, for example. Like, they take out a different layer of labor. So you still have people doing the quote unquote, scare quotes again, the like grunt work, the actual like taking the food from place to place. But the layer which exists above them, the managers, that's an algorithm. And that's a very interesting aspect of how kind of technology inserts itself into these relations which used to be between people, and instead become between a person and a machine, and then maybe a person on the other side.
Wow. Kind of scary when you kind of think about it like that.
It is kind of scary, but it doesn't. It doesn't have to be. I think that's fundamentally the thing, is that you strip back the systems within which this stuff is operating, and there's something there which is cool and which is good and which actually can have the potential to make our lives a lot better. It's just at the moment, in a lot of these situations, it's not necessarily doing that. Like, coming back to the example at the start, like, fundamentally one of the reasons why that whole kind of one of the reasons, other than what I mentioned at the start, which that kind of big data collection thing is such a bad thing, is because the data is kind of weaponized against you in order to make it so that you buy more and more relevant, once again, stuff. Like it's an incentive to purchase from a feedback mechanism. Whereas there are some very useful things that could come of it. It's just it's being used against you, and it's being used in the service of a very, very large and uh, greedy for acquiring companies and capital company.
Yeah, it's very scary kind of to think about like how everything that you kind of do today is kind of used against you in some type of way for corporate, I don't want to say corporate greed, but I want to say like just kind of just used against you to kind of manipulate you into buying services from a company or buying products from a company. It is scary whenever like I talk about or whatever um I think about getting say like McDonald's or some new piece of tech, and the next thing I see when I'm scrolling down my Instagram is like a McDonald's ad or like a Best Buy ad for tech that is on sale that I was talking about. It's very scary to think about kind of everything that's kind of listening to us and how there really is no privacy nowadays.
Well, you see, so this one I think is inherently a very, very interesting thing, because I think there's a misunderstanding of how that system works, and I think when you learn what the misunderstanding is and you get the correction, it actually becomes more creepy, because the whole the phones listening to us all the time thing. I mean, putting on the serious tinfoil hat, maybe that is something that you believe, and if you have engaged at all with one of the most famous privacy and security, not celebrities, but individuals of the past like 10, 15 years, Edward Snowden, you would know that he fundamentally believed that the government was kind of spying on him through his phone and stuff like that. And I have no reason to doubt him on that, because as an individual, that would make sense. Like, he's the kind of target you go for. But actually, the reason why you see all of these very, very relevant ads yourself on a regular basis is not because you're being listened to through your phone. It's actually because the big data methods which are being used in order to decide what exactly it is that you want are sophisticated enough and joined up enough to give the experience as if you're being listened to through your phone. And I feel like that's more creepy to me, because with the listen to through your phone thing, at least if I carried around like a Faraday cage with me, some like little thing that I can put the phone in so that it's not able to do that kind of calling home stuff and the microphone isn't active and things like that, I could easily kind of solve that problem. But when it comes to existing within a tracking structure that can actually get those sort of things without having to do that direct listening, that's even more of a strange proposition, right?
Yeah, yeah, because like when you think about just like your phone listening to you, that's kind of just straightforward and like kind of simple thing to comprehend. But when you're putting it like this, it's well, it's kind of like more that you have more control
Mm.
over the fact that that you were thinking that your phone can listen to you, so you have more control to prevent that. But with this option, you don't really like you don't have much like many options to prevent it, really, it sounds like.
Yeah, well, you'll have. I mean, you get people who kind of work in the space of like privacy tech and stuff like that. And I mean, not everyone is a saint who works in that when it comes to, well, it's not even a saint. Like, I think there's an issue when it comes to the privacy circles about people being so extreme and doing their absolute best to be more into privacy in other people, and constantly attempting to one up their own journey. But there are people who very much know about this stuff and who take a lot of precautions in order to avoid it, who still end up getting the same kind of things fed to them, who still get the like you said, the McDonald's advert after having pretty much just thought about McDonald's. And it's because like this tracking stuff that happens on the web, it's sticky and it clings to everything. You can try and sew up a bunch of different holes, but eventually there will be a peeking through bit that will get you. And I mean that's not to, I don't want to sound fatalistic at all. Like obviously you should always do your absolute best to minimize that data stuff as much as possible. And hence, I mean, I work at a non-tracking
I
search
was gonna
engine.
say
That's
this
yeah.
is a
This
this
is
is a perfect ad for your company right now.
roll the clip. Yeah, like there are things that you can do in order to minimize that collection of data. There are obviously, yeah, you can use Mojik to search the web. That will help you. You can use an email provider that is not constantly scanning every single email that comes into your inbox in order to feed it into the
Oh my
profile. Yeah.
god. Oh my god, that makes so much sense now.
Yeah. You wonder
That's where
why.
they get you. That's where they get you, Google. Google gets you because they lock you into their ecosystem. Oh my god. YouTube requires your Gmail account. Gmail just requires your Gmail. And it's all tied in into Google. Then you Google search. Oh my god. I cannot believe that. I didn't realize that from the get-go. And it's
Exactly.
just like Apple. I'm stuck in the Apple ecosystem too. And now I'm stuck in the Google ecosystem. Cause I was gonna say you can just like use like I don't know if they have this in the UK, but we have a browser called DuckDuckGo here.
Uh-huh.
And that kind of provides like the same use as the company that you're working for in the UK. But that could have been a simple problem, but that doesn't tie into any ecosystem at all.
And I mean, yeah, this is the kind of one of the first things whenever I've talked to people about, because obviously like having an interest in this area, working in this area, every now and again you get one of your friends come to you and say, Josh, how can I stop this stuff from happening? And the first thing that I kind of give as a rule is think about it as a situation where you are going to benefit from fragmentation. Like you do not want to be in a situation where down the line you're using Google Chrome and Gmail and you're watching YouTube, like keeping all of those things in a column together. Like that's like you said, it's like an ecosystem. Like all of these things feed off of each other. If you can push these packages of data around a little bit and kind of keep them away from each other, you at least start to kind of create a situation where it's a little bit less likely that you're gonna have these creepy issues pop up. But I mean, there's no real like there's no panacea. It's something that you kind of have to work on. It's a marathon, not a sprint, as we say.
That's crazy. Wow. I am a sucker for Google Chrome too, but on my laptop I am switching away from Google kind of and moving towards Safari only because Google Chrome kind of eats up like the majority of my RAM and then my fans can just go crazy.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's not a great browser. There's so many other options out there. Yeah, I applaud you in that decision for sure.
But I'm on my PC right now and I use Google I still use Google Chrome on this because I have enough RAM where it doesn't really make it heat up and all that. But that is crazy. I thought I was just like a sucker just for Apple, but now that I kind of think about it, I am a sucker for Google now too, which I don't know about. Wow.
I
Oh my
mean, there are
god.
just several very, very large companies that own pretty much everything when it comes to this space.
I mean, like with Google, it's still nice because, like, I mean, like I know that I'm getting like that I'm having my searches read through, but then again, it's just so convenient just opening up the Google app and just seeing news articles of like stuff that actually like interests me,
Hmm, for
and I'm
sure.
like, and I'm like, that's a nice aspect. But just thinking about it now, I'm just like, oh man, I'm basically serving my interests and myself on a silver platter up to them.
Yeah, I mean, like the thing is, and it comes down to something which is fundamental to us as humans, and something which, as time has gone on and things have got more and more nuts when it comes to the things that you interact with on a daily basis. Like people pine for simplicity. They look for the simplest solution to something because at the end of the day, life is very, very complex. Like I said to you earlier in this call, or actually, no, I said to you before this call. Sorry, I've recently moved house, and that has just slammed a wrecking ball into my normal, already quite hectic routine. Like
Oh yeah.
people are doing so many different things. You're getting messages from everywhere on a day-to-day basis. You're getting emails. You've got your job. You're probably doing it from home now. You might not be. I'm not sure what's happening in your country. Everyone in this country is currently doing it from home, and so you've got to balance that. And maybe you've got some kids about, or your partner is very busy. In my case, and I'm constantly cooking dinner. Like there's so many different things you have to factor in, and so having something that can kind of pull away from that complexity and give you something that is enjoyable and quite clear and easy is the junk food technology stuff. And I mean, it's it's something which we kind of have to grapple with, the things that happen off the back of it, which are inherently problematic.
Man, I probably would have never realized this unless we had this talk right now, and I'm just a sucker. I can't believe myself right now.
But the thing is that when so I wouldn't use such a cruel word. I would not call you a sucker at all. But sorry, fundamentally, like lots and lots of people are colored with the same brush. Like lots and lots of people are suckers, quote unquote. Once again, like that. No, your words, not mine. I'm using it here. And it's because number one, this information is not something which is easy to engage with, but also it's something which is not quite like it's not put out there by a ton of people, especially because a lot of people make a lot of money and benefit off the back of this model. um, and it can be difficult to rend yourself away from that stuff. It can be hard to start this journey. And then eventually, a little way down the way, you become extremely obsessive. You end up in a job where you're doing it and you're buying flipping Amazon Dash buttons so that you can show the world that obsolescence in tech is a bad thing. Um, but yeah, I mean, what I would say to you is just start thinking about it, like map it out, like look at what you've got and see what small changes you could make in order to maybe take a little bit more of that kind of sovereignty over the information that exists about yourself in the world, and do not be fatalistic about it, and don't treat it as something where you have to all of a sudden become anonymous, because you don't.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah. I do plan on getting a new MacBook toward the end of the year, and uh I am for sure not gonna download Google Chrome on that, even though the computer that I probably want at toward the end of the year can perfectly handle it. But I'm gonna take this first step because I think that well, I will probably do all of my editing and my work on my Mac and then keep my PC for gaming. So first step is to use Safari. That's my first step.
Power to you. It's all about baby steps. It's all about baby steps.
But we are approaching that time where we sadly have to end the show. But Josh, it was an amazing conversation with you. I'm
I
very
feel the
glad
same.
that we were able to talk more about the kind of like just the changing world and how tech is becoming everywhere and becoming part is becoming a part of our lives. Where can my listeners find you at? Do you have a podcast? Do you have an audio book or something?
I do not have a podcast, although I have many a time thought about starting one, especially because of the quantity of pro audio equipment that is in my house. But no, I would say that if you think I've been an interesting individual and you want to learn more about this wonderful world of technology, then I am Privacy Dingus on Twitter, which is
Love that.
Dingus. Could not think of a better name. And yeah, also I work at Mojik on Twitter as well, and I am constantly tweeting through that account as well, and we give a lot of quite interesting and cool tips when it comes to personal privacy and stuff like that. And obviously, we maintain a search engine which does not track you. So, those are the things that I would say follow up with. And yeah, if you had any questions about how you could live a more private life or any of the stuff that I discussed, then ping me. Hopefully, people would see me as quite a friendly guy and quite approachable.
Yes, from the sounds from our conversation, it was very easy to talk to you. You do seem like a very personable person who does like to talk about tech, and so do I. So I'm pretty sure that's why we were probably able to mesh together so well. But yeah, definitely check him out. Reach out to him about anything. I'll have his social media links in the description of this podcast. And Josh, at the end of the show, if you have any other articles that you want to like kind of like link to the show, uh, be it like a maybe like a section that we talked about, and you have an article that could kind of supplement more information to the listeners, just so when they listen to it and then they can look at that article just to get like a better understanding of it. It will all be linked on the More You Know, well, podcast.com. That's where I will be posting all of my episodes along with any supplemental information and kind of more information about the guest itself, because I know in the podcast description you can't really put much into it. So that's why we have a website now to put all that goodies in.
Wonderful.
So yeah, once again, Josh, thanks so much for coming
Oh,
on.
thank you for
I
having me.
this has been a month in the making, and the wait definitely did pay off. And I'm very glad that you were so flexible and were able to do this at a time where it kind of fit my schedule more.
Oh, of course. Yeah, no worry at all. Yeah, thanks ever so much for having me. It's been great.
Yeah,
Wonderful conversation.
yeah, likewise. Thanks. All right, and that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed this show of The More You Know. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating this podcast on Apple Podcasts. It'll certainly help me out in the algorithm, and be sure to subscribe or follow to The More You Know on your favorite podcasting platform like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts, or any of your favorite podcasting apps. And lastly, if you would like to contribute to The More You Know, you can head over to anchor.fm// The More You Know Pod and contribute any monetary value to help the quality of the show, and in the future bring on some more interesting guests. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate all of my listeners, and I hope you guys have a wonderful week.